Axio, how Iron Man 2 may have set up Fantastic Four and connections it to see what kind of cool somebody has to say about this. Check this out.
We're going in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what up everyone, Tay here, and today I just wanted to do a pretty short theory video on the upcoming Fantastic Four movie and how it could tie into the events of Iron Man 2 and also be connected to other movies coming up like Ant-Man Quantumania and Avengers Secret Wars, but then also be connected to other MCU movies in the past that came out in Phase 1. But first, before we get into all of that, if you missed the two most recent videos I just posted over the weekend, then you should definitely check those out. They are linked in the description down below. We have one on the Thunderbolts and Wolverine and Captain America 4, and then another one all about, Avengers Secret Wars and the multiverse, all that stuff. So they're good ones. Check them out if you missed them. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new here and a fan of Marvel and the MCU, because that is what we talk about here. And remember, the best way to support the channel is to share the video. And then also, be sure to watch until the end of the video, because we do have some super thanks questions to get to and respond to at the end. So watch until the end for the super thanks questions. But anyways, enough with me rambling. Let's get into this.
I'm the smartest man alive. Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four.
Hello, Stephen.
Fantastic Four. Didn't you guys chart in the 60s?
I'm sorry, is this a joke to you?
Okay, so as I'm sure many of you have seen, there have been a ton of leaks and rumors coming out lately about the Fantastic Four movie. I mean, there's been a bunch of casting rumors for one about Adam Driver and Ryan Gosling joining the cast of the movie, and then there's also been more recent leaks that Galactus may end up being the primary antagonist of the movie, and that the Silver Surfer is also going to be introduced, and that might be who Ryan Gosling's playing. But pretty much all of the other comic book channels on YouTube have already been talking about that the last day or so. So I don't want to cover the same thing you've already heard a bunch of other channels already talking about. So what I wanted to do in this video was talk about something else related to the Fantastic Four. And it's just a short theory, but it's one that I've had for a long, long time now. And this theory goes back to a partially deleted scene that happened way back in Phase 1 in Iron Man 2. And the scene I'm talking about happens when Tony is trying to create a new element, and he tells Jarvis to search S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files for any information on Projects Pegasus, Exodus, and Goliath.
Tap the Oracle grid. I need some stuff out of storage. Give me everything from Projects Pegasus, Exodus, and Goliath.
Pegasus, Exodus, and Goliath.
Now, when you watch that scene, it seems pretty nonchalant, like it's not really a big deal. But this was the first time any of these projects were ever actually mentioned in the MCU. Because Iron Man 2 came out in 2010, and then 2 years later, we saw Project Pegasus actually introduced on screen in the first Avengers movie, and we found out that it was a joint operation between S.H.I.E.L.D., NASA, and the Air Force to research the Tesseract, which then devolved into the Tesseract being used as an energy source for military aircrafts and advanced weaponry. And we saw the origins of Project Pegasus in the Captain Marvel movie, and how it was all started by Mar-Vell in the 1980s during her time on Earth. And then, besides Project Pegasus, there's also Project Goliath. And Marvel Studios didn't actually reveal the backstory for Project Goliath until Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018. And Project Goliath was a joint project between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Pym Labs that was ran by Hank Pym and Bill Foster to do quantum research on the potential of the Pym particles. And we also know that Ghost, Ava Starr, that her father, Elias Starr, also worked with Hank and Bill doing research at S.H.I.E.L.D. until he was fired by Hank at some point around the late 90s. And with Hank, we know that Hank was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. as far back as at least 1970, because we saw a younger version of Hank during this 1970s time travel scene in Avengers Endgame, when they go back in time to get the Tesseract. So while there was never an exact timeline revealed for when Project Goliath occurred in the MCU, most likely it was probably at some point between the 1970s and the 1990s. But out of these three projects that Tony mentions back in Iron Man 2, the only one that Marvel Studios has yet to reveal what it is Project Exodus. And you may be thinking, well, it's been almost 14 years since Iron Man 2 came out, so maybe they're never going to reveal it. Maybe it'll just kind of disappear and be forgotten. And that could definitely be true, but what I would say to that is it took them 10 years to reveal the backstory for what Project Goliath was in Ant-Man and the Wasp, which came out in 2018. So I do think it's pretty likely that Marvel Studios will reveal what Project Exodus is at some point in the future. Now, as far as what we know about what Project Pegasus might have been, we don't have very much to go on. But we do know that Iron Man 2, even though it came out in 2010, that the events of the movie are supposed to be happening in 2008. So it definitely was something that happened before 2008. And we know that Project Pegasus began in the 1980s, and that Project Goliath probably happened at some point between the 70s to 90s. So we can assume that whatever Project Exodus was, that it happened at least a few decades before Iron Man 2, and that it was likely ran by S.H.I.E.L.D. in partnership with some other group of some kind, similar to how Project Pegasus was S.H.I.E.L.D. working with NASA and the Air Force, and Project Goliath was S.H.I.E.L.D. working with Pym Labs. And what my theory is, what I think Project Exodus could end up potentially being, is a project that S.H.I.E.L.D. ran with the Fantastic Four, or maybe the Future Foundation, back in the 1960s. Because for the past 2 years, there's been a bunch of different rumors and leaks that the MCU Fantastic Four movie is either going to fully take place in the 1960s, or at least partially take place in the 1960s. And just recently, some more leaks and rumors about this started coming out again in the last few weeks. And as I'm sure many of you will remember, in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, when the 838 version of Reed Richards is introduced to Doctor Strange as being from the Fantastic Four, Doctor Strange jokingly responds, "The Fantastic Four, didn't you guys chart in the 60s?" Now, I know a lot of people just took this as a joke and that this line could just be passed off as Doctor Strange basically just being a dick, and maybe that's all it is. But we know that with Marvel Studios, they're always putting little hints in their movies to kind of foreshadow what they're planning and what they're working on. So what if the reason that Doctor Strange said this or had this in his mind is because in the MCU 616 universe, the Fantastic Four may have been a superhero family that actually existed back in the 1960s that some people have heard of but have kind of forgotten about because at some point in the past they went missing. Because if in the MCU it turns out that the Fantastic Four are from the 60s, then by the end of the Fantastic Four movie, Marvel Studios will most likely have to figure out a way to bring those characters into the present day of the MCU so they can then interact with the rest of the MCU characters, and also so they can be included in the events of Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. And the word Exodus means to depart, or a large departure of people. So whatever Project Exodus is in the MCU, it sounds like it will probably be about a group of people going on some kind of mysterious adventure or some kind of research trip. So what if Project Exodus was a project that happened back in the 1960s with the Fantastic Four, where they went on some kind of journey and never returned? And if something like this turned out to be true, then there could be a few different possibilities of what kind of journey that could be. Like maybe the Fantastic Four were a research team that was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. on creating time travel technology, and that they then left on a mission to time travel and never returned. Or maybe instead of it being a time travel mission, it could be a cosmic mission of some kind where the Fantastic Four are working with S.H.I.E.L.D. and they go on this adventure out into space and never return from that. Which, if the leaks about Galactus and Silver Surfer being in the movie are true, then a cosmic mission of some kind would definitely make sense. And of course, going on some kind of cosmic mission or a time travel mission or something like this would be the perfect opportunity for Marvel Studios to explain how the Fantastic Four got their powers. And if it turned out to be a time travel mission that they went on, then maybe they could have traveled back in time to ancient Egypt and encountered the Kang variant Rama Tut and end up getting stuck there. Because Marvel Studios have been saying that there are still going to be a bunch of different Kang variants that will be introduced before we get to Avengers Kang Dynasty. Now, obviously, a few of those Kang variants will most likely be introduced in Loki Season 2, but I could totally see the Kang variant Rama Tut being introduced in the Fantastic Four movie, because Kang's first ever appearance in the comics was as Rama Tut in Fantastic Four issue 19 back in 1963. But either way, if Project Exodus was a time travel mission or a cosmic mission, at the end of the Fantastic Four movie, what could end up happening is when the Fantastic Four finally return to Earth from this mission, instead of returning back to the 1960s, they could return to the present day of the MCU, which by that time will probably be like 2027 or something like that. And this whole thing could be very similar to what happened in Captain America the First Avenger, where that movie was a period piece set in the 1940s, but then at the end of the movie, Steve wakes up from the ice in the modern day of 2012, just before the events of the first Avengers movie. And I could totally see the Fantastic Four movie kind of following a similar trajectory, where the movie ends with all of the Fantastic Four returning to Earth, but it's in the future, in the present day, and then the post-credit scene for the movie is some kind of big teaser for Avengers Kang Dynasty, because that will be the next movie on the slate coming up after the Fantastic Four. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens, because like I said, this is just purely a fun theory video, nothing too serious. So you guys will have to, leave your own theories on this in the comments down below. Because you guys, a lot of times you guys come up with some great theories. Sometimes they're a little over the top, but sometimes my theories are pretty over the top too. So yeah, leave your own theories on this down in the comments below. But I will just say, I do think this would be a very cool way to introduce the Fantastic Four into the MCU, and it would also explain why the Fantastic Four have never showed up in the MCU before now, because they were actually from the 1960s and they were stuck somewhere out in space or somewhere in time or something like that. And if something like this turned out to be correct, and the Fantastic Four worked with S.H.I.E.L.D. all the way back in the 1960s, then they would have probably known people like Peggy Carter and Howard Stark, and maybe even Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, who they could be reunited with in Avengers Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars. But anyways, alright, I think we're going to call it there for this one, because I can already feel my voice starting to go out. But we still have some super thanks questions to get to, so before we go, let's get to those.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, so there's a good handful of super thanks to get to from the last two videos, and it looks like most of them have questions, but a few don't. So like always, I will just kind of shout out those that don't have questions first. And those are from Paul Sanford and Chris. Chris, again, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because I know I won't get it right. But we have two $5 ones from Chris and two $2 ones from Paul. Thank you very much to both of you guys. You're always being consistent and leaving those super thanks, especially Paul. I know you leave them on pretty much every video, so as always, very much appreciated. Then we have a $5 one from Dave, and it says, "Hi Tay, glad this video mentioned the X-Men. how did She-Hulk know about the X-Men when she asked Kevin? Alright, good question, Dave. And the answer to this question doesn't really fit with the logic of the MCU, because the whole point is this is breaking the fourth wall, where Jennifer Walters is now existing in the real world like we do as fans, and kind of looking at the MCU from that point of view instead of existing within the MCU, because within the MCU, someone like Kevin Feige obviously wouldn't exist. So it's not really meant to make sense with like MCU canon and stuff like that. It's more just meant to be a joke scene. So yeah, I hope that's an okay answer to your question, Dave, and thank you for the super thanks. And then we have $5 from One Fat Cat, and it says, best Marvel analysis videos available. Thank you very much, One Fat Cat. And then the question is, can't wait for Quantum Mania and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Who do you reasonably see dying in these two movies? Okay, good question. I don't think any of the main characters will die in Ant-Man Quantumania. If one of them did, I would think it would be Hank, but I don't think any of the big characters are going to die, but I think we will probably see some side characters like the Freedom Fighters in the Quantum Realm die. And then as far as Guardians of the Galaxy goes, I think the most likely character to die is most definitely Drax, and that Rocket probably won't die and he'll survive the movie, but Drax is a goner. So yeah, thank you very much, Kat, for the super thanks. Then, moving on, the next question is from Daniel Griffin, and it says, bro, I refuse to believe that it's pure coincidence that there is a character named Quaz in Quantum Mania, and it's not somehow related to Quasar. And I feel you, man. I don't think it's going to be Quasar, but if it did turn out to be Quasar in a twist, I wouldn't be shocked. But I think the most likely scenario is most likely it's just a quirky name for one of the freedom fighters in the Quantum Realm. But I see your point, for sure. But anyways, then the next super thanks is from Jeffrey Cote, one of my favorite people here. And he left $5, or whatever that is in England money. And his says, thanks for another awesome video, bro. I was just wondering if or how you think the mini-sagas theory will still play out. Okay, so what this is in reference to is a video I put out probably like 2 years ago. After Avengers Endgame came out, I said maybe what Marvel Studios will do, instead of just working straight to another big event, crossover like Infinity War, that maybe they would do kind of different interconnected mini-sagas. And while that's not exactly what's happening, I do think they are kind of doing that with some projects. Like if you look at what they're doing with Daredevil Born Again, Captain America 4, and the Thunderbolts, it does look like they are treating those as kind of an interconnected street-level story that is kind of making a little mini-saga, but it's not like they are coming out and calling it that or giving it an official name. But I will say, even though that's not exactly what they're doing with the Multiverse Saga, I wouldn't be surprised if they went a route like that once we get to Phase 7, since they are now putting out so many different projects that take place in so many different areas of the MCU, that if they had like a mutant saga going, and then at the same time there was like an interconnected cosmic saga out in space, or something like that. Because if they keep following the same formula too much, then it'll start to get stale. So I wouldn't be surprised if after Avengers Secret Wars, if they try to switch it up a bit and kind of do the mini-sagas thing and wait 10 years until the next big crossover event. So yeah, thank you very much for the super thanks, Jeffrey. But anyways, then I actually have 2 other super thanks that I actually want to save, because they're questions that tie directly into stuff I want to talk about in the next video. One's about Battleworld and one's about the Beyonder. So we have a $10 one from Lipstick Trainface, and then another very generous $70 from Jeff Fettis? Sorry, I'm not good with last names sometimes. But I just wanted to shout you guys out in this video, but let you know that I'm going to save your questions for the next video so I can just kind of tie it into the whole thing. So I hope you guys are cool with that. So yeah, I think that's it for the super thanks on this video. And if any of you would like to leave a super thanks with a question on this video, remember I will answer your question in the next video, or just give you a shout out if you didn't leave a question. But anyways, alright, I think we're going to call it here for this one and wrap things up. So I hope you guys liked this video. Please like and subscribe if you did, and remember to share the video. That's the best way to support the channel. And also remember to check out the recent videos if you missed them. I posted 2 this last weekend, one about Thunderbolts and Wolverine and Captain America 4, and another one all about Avengers Secret Wars and the Multiverse Saga, so check those out if you missed them. And then lastly, don't forget to come follow the channel on Twitter, because that is the best place for updates when videos come out, or just to come say what's up, all that stuff. And yeah, I think that's everything. So I hope you guys liked the video, and I will be back soon.
This is Twilight, the City of Great Night, and see you guys on to watching. See you guys.